So we would, back in the day, write a press release, and then we would send that press release out to, say, 4 or 5 different newspapers. But depending on the newspaper, we tailored it. So if I was sending the press release to a tabloid, for example, versus a broadsheet, it would be exactly the same press release, but it would be written slightly different.
Hi, friends. Ever wondered how you could turn your big ideas into results? I'm Maria Rio, your go-to guide for helping small nonprofits have real-world impacts. Together, let's reimagine a better sector, tackle systemic issues, and yes, raise some serious cash. Welcome back to The Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Small Nonprofit Podcast. Today, I have the biggest LinkedIn expert that you probably already know about, Michelle Benson, joining me to actually give us some of her actionable tips on how to use LinkedIn better. So for prospecting, for building your personal brand, for, moving your mission forward. And I'm just really excited to introduce you all to her. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, Maria, it's so lovely to be here. Really excited to talk to you today.
Me too. Michelle, I just always see your posts on LinkedIn and I'm like, I love this, but I can't keep resharing your work every day. It's awesome. I would love if you could quickly introduce yourself to the audience.
Definitely. So my name is Michelle Benson. I've worked in the nonprofit space for about 30 years now, believe it or not. Originally as a fundraiser, as a corporate fundraiser. And then I became a fundraising director for a variety of charities, big and small. Hopped over the fence in about 2012 and became a funder. So worked in the funding space for a while. And then back in 2018, I started my own business to help charities of all sizes to be found by funders. Because when I was a funder, I found, we were proactively looking for charities. And I've noticed that charities are very, very good at chasing money, not so great at being found by people who are looking. So my whole stick is, there are lots of funders out there proactively looking. Get yourself in their pathway and be found.
That's so funny because I've always been a fundraiser, but definitely in my mind, you have these family foundations that barely exist on the internet, right? But I think we don't usually take that lens to ourselves. Like, how big is your digital presence? Is your website functional? And I know probably a lot of our listeners are kind of like cringing at that. They're like, oh no, my website is not functional. So how do we kind of use all these systems, digital systems that exist already to our own advantage, which I'm really excited to discuss further with you today.
Amazing.
So let's dive in. One of the things that you are really great at is LinkedIn. And I wanted to ask, why LinkedIn?
Well, the reason I focused on LinkedIn was because I said I wanted fundraisers, CEOs, trustees, people that are keen to help raise money for the charity to be found. And the wonderful thing about LinkedIn, of course, is people on there give you their job title. So if I'm a director of a trust fund, it's going to say trust fund, or if I'm a CSR, corporate ESG, CSR, HR, marketing, it's going to say so, unlike other channels. So number one, I can find people and search for them on their jobs. Number two, when people are on LinkedIn, they're in their work mindset. So ultimately, they're at work. And if we're looking for high value partnerships, that's where, obviously we want people during the day at work, and that's where they are, and that's where they're coming and visiting the platform. And also it's where, it makes it very searchable. And then when they do find you, you're not interrupting their sort of personal time. You're going for that. And it is one of the fastest growing, platforms as well. So, and LinkedIn have gathered all those. So if you look up, there are literally thousands and thousands of grant makers on LinkedIn. Philanthropy advisors are on there and growing. Corporates are on there and growing. So it's a platform that's already gathered your audience. And also, unlike other audiences, you can proactively send out connection requests, which you can't necessarily on other platforms as well. So there's less of a barrier to connection, easy to find. They're there already and they're at work.
I love that. And I think with that work mentality, it makes it more appropriate for you to kind of
Yeah,
reach out in that way. So I don't know about you, but I've had donors like add me on Facebook, add me on Instagram. And
yeah,
I'm a little bit like,
yeah,
no, this is my private life.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
not like I like you, but please. And on LinkedIn, like if they add me, I don't feel that kind of way. So I wonder if it's the same for the funder. Like if you add them, through LinkedIn, it feels very appropriate and very comfortable versus, finding them on TikTok somehow.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want them when they're in their pajamas watching hamster videos on the sofa, right?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want them in their work brain and
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
for organizations. Um, so I love all things social media. I understand algorithms enough, but just like maybe walk through everybody in the audience, like how to best use LinkedIn as a tool to be found by.
yeah, yeah. So ultimately, I'm sure people listening to this podcast are incredibly aware that if I turned around to them and said, "Hey, would you like to get some money out of a trust fund or out of a corporate or a major donor?" They could say, "Sure." And they could go off to into the internet or directories or whatever and come up with a wonderful list of people that they potentially would be, have affinity with and could partner with and all the rest of it, meet their giving criteria. But then the problem comes with how do you actually get hold of those people? How do you connect? And ultimately, LinkedIn's mission statement is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And a mission statement, another way of thinking about it is think a bit like a mission statement of a social platform is the algorithm's job description. So if you look at Facebook's mission statement, it's about building community. So if I was a community funder, churches, schools, hobbies, runners, things like that, Facebook is amazing because it's all about strengthening communities. And that's why people, you could just look at the content on Facebook and it suits that type of thing, right? Where LinkedIn is to connect the world's professionals to make them more successful and productive. So what you really want to be thinking about is people go onto LinkedIn to help meet their business goals or if I was a grant giving trust and I'm on there looking for potential partners or talking to other grant making trusts about, the newest systems or whatever, I'm on there to help me fulfill my job. And so if you come in and you start talking all about, me, myself and I, you're not talking about their job and how you're going to help them fulfill it. Where if you are going onto LinkedIn, and the first thing what you could do is connect with some of the funders that you potentially want to start a relationship with or follow them even. You don't even have to connect with them. It becomes like a giant focus group. They constantly go on and talk about themselves. It gives you educates you as to what they're interested in and why, and therefore you can join in that conversation. And that's how you get to know people, and people get to know you. And it's those conversations and that relationship starting that you're doing in the main news feed that drives people to check out your profile or drives people to then start sending you direct messages through the messaging function to say, I'd quite like a conversation with you. And that's pretty much it. So you go in, you follow who you're interested in, you observe what they're talking about, you join the conversation, and you start making friends that way.
You know what's so funny? Like I did this what you're talking about like following someone and then kind of engaging. And they did actually view my profile back, and they're a billionaire in Canada. So I'm like, oh,
Uh,
we've never met in person. There's no reason other than me like liking your posts and commenting and all that stuff for you to be looking at my profile. So I found that very, very helpful. Um, and then you start seeing these connection people who might not have been in your network before, connection like suggestions, um, who are more similar to that person.
yes,
Once you
yeah,
start getting engaged in those conversations, like I'll automatically recommend like that person's like high school crew and they all went to the
yeah,
same like private
yeah,
school,
yeah,
and they all ran in the same circles and have the same kind of like net worth. So I always found that like really interesting. And I feel like since it's such a socially acceptable way to reach out to someone, we
yes,
really need to
yeah,
get people to like wake up when it comes to LinkedIn.
yeah. I think also the other advantage you've got is the whole system. Social media is rigged, if you like. So it's rigged for us to get quite addicted to it and keep coming back. And they want us to constantly cut. The social media sell our attention to advertisers. That's how they make their money. So the more people that keep coming back and engaging on the platform, the more attention they have to sell. And so ultimately, the algorithm's watching your every move, going, "What does it take to get your attention?" And if you start poking about a load of grant making trusts um, pages, it's going to think that's how I get your attention. So it starts bringing you more of the same. So it starts prospecting for you in that respect. So it, and as you say, you start noticing the minute you start looking at one thing, it starts giving you a load more. The other thing it does is if you and I write a post and people like and comment on our post, it sends us notifications that ping and ding and do all the other stuff. And what it's trying to do is every time it says, "Hey, you've got a like," or "Hey, you've got a comment," or anything, it's trying to send us a dopamine hit. So if you are a grant making person and I start liking and commenting on your stuff, Maria, I'm literally sending you a dopamine hit. And that's how I'm kicking off a relationship with you, which is a quite nice way to start, to introduce yourself and start a relationship, right? As opposed to I could be spamming you in your messages, unwanted emails, unwanted spamming, and I could be annoying you. So I can either go the dopamine hit route, which I've got the algorithm, the wind in my back, as it were, working for me and bringing me more, or I can spam everybody and just be a really annoying person and get blocked.
Very true. So, how have you used LinkedIn in the past? Maybe with clients, like what kind of donor portfolios are you looking at? I think corporate would make a lot of sense in
Yeah.
foundations.
The main ones are the high value partnerships. So it's corporates, major donors. And although people always say to me, but major donors aren't on LinkedIn, or if they're on LinkedIn, they'll say, "I'm a lawyer," not necessarily "I'm a philanthropist," right? They're not necessarily, well, they are on LinkedIn, but they're hard to identify. Or maybe they're older or whatever, and they're not on LinkedIn. But they're people that do the looking on their behalf are. So family offices, wealth advisors, philanthropy advisors, those are the people you connect with. And then when you connect with them, you start seeing who they're chatting to, and it's kind of obvious who their clients are. Um, so grant making trusts, philanthropists, corporates, and also for legacies, because obviously legacy fundraisers work through solicitors and lawyers, and obviously they're um, on LinkedIn.
Okay, you just blew my mind. I did not. I did not. What? Like a planned giving strategy using LinkedIn through their lawyers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's huge. Yeah, wow. That sounds amazing. I think one of the things that people overlook though when it comes to their LinkedIn is how they present themselves,
yeah,
which is wild to hear. Like people have their like director of development, but then your picture is like a selfie. It's not a professional picture. It's you have nothing else in your profile. Like it just has your charity name. So I wonder
yeah.
if there's ways to like make yourself stand out in a way that is professional, but doesn't blur the line between personal and, yes, personal and
Yeah,
professional.
yeah. I would definitely go down the professional route. And also, the other thing that I would really say is make sure your photograph looks like you, because there's a lot of, 20-year-old me's knocking around LinkedIn, right? I had one of my students who did my LinkedIn course. She got to know a CSR director really well on LinkedIn, and that person then sent her a message saying, would you like to come in for a meeting, blah, blah, blah. So she went into the office. She walked into a really, really busy reception, and this chap came downstairs, looked across the busy reception and knew exactly who she was immediately, because he recognized her from her LinkedIn photograph because it looked like her. And then there's this other thing where people meet up. You've made people have got to know virtual you on LinkedIn, and then they've reached out, and now they're doing like a Zoom, or a let's meet in a cafe or whatever it is. There's that wonderful moment where a complete stranger jumps on or walks into the cafe, and you feel like you know each other because you recognize each other. If your photograph is really old, I'm going to get that moment of, oh, you're not the person I thought I knew. That's really disappointing. Whereas if I walk in and I've got virtual, like it's quite exciting, like, oh my God. So you want something that looks like you. And you also want something people want to be able to see you, especially your eyes. So there's a lot of photographs of people, behind a podium giving a speech or stuff like that. We can't see your face. We can't get to know you because we can't see you, because especially because most of us are on mobiles now, it's that tiny little circle. There's no way I can see your face now. So or they have like a picture or a logo or something like that. It's social media. It's get to know people, start relationships media. So we want to see your face and see you. You wouldn't walk around a real networking event in disguise. That would be weird, right? Or yeah, so you just want to say. I would also say another little tip is behind your head, try to block out the color. So if you've got a photograph of you standing like next to a tree or it actually, when you like and comment, you don't stand out at all. It blurs it. Black and white's not great either. It looks aesthetically great, but we can't see you properly, especially on mobiles. So you just want to up to date, reasonably professional shot of yourself, preferably on your own, not with other people, so we know who you are. One of my students, he's got a photograph of him with a celebrity, except for I'm rubbish at celebrities. So I didn't recognize the celebrity at all. I thought it was his wedding. I thought it was him and his wife. And it was like, no, she's like some mad. So I didn't recognize it. I just figured it was like his wedding day. It looked kind of weddingy. So you just recognizable is the way to go, and standing out.
Okay, so we have the algorithm prospecting for us and showing us to others. We have a good headshot. We look professional. Our profile is, optimized a little bit better. What role does content and content creation of me, myself as a fundraiser or someone prospecting play in this?
Content oils the wheels. So basically, it just makes everything go. If you've got good content, you can demand a lot more attention, and people stop and comment and like and everything. So you draw people to you, and then you engage with them. But obviously, good content can be quite daunting for people who think, oh my goodness, I'm going to go on LinkedIn and have to put great content out, and they get really worried. So first of all, liking and commenting is you being present. Reposting is you being present. So you don't have to go straight to content development. You can find your sea legs with a bit of liking and commenting before you get into the thing. With content, what you want to do is you really want to engage your audience. So if it's all about, me, generally people aren't that interested. They're more interested in reading about how you can help them achieve their goals and make their job better. So that's the preferable content. I would also say, I think content is like a joke. So I would say a joke has you want the joke, you want a rate of revelation. You don't want the joke to go on for 10 years, right? You want to get to the punchline reasonably quickly, and you want one good punchline, one good takeaway. You don't want four or five. If you've got 4 or 5 points, that's 4 or 5 posts. One post, one point, like a joke, one punchline. The other thing is, if a joke is really, really funny, I could tell you the joke on video. I could write it down. I could turn it into a cartoon. And it's still a funny joke, right? The fact it's on video or whether I've turned it into a cartoon is irrelevant. It's the punchline. It's the joke that is funny. That's like content. So if you say, is it better to do video? If it's rubbish content, a video is not going to save it. If it's a really, really dull content, amazing graphic isn't going to save it. It's not going, a terrible rubbish joke that's not funny isn't going to be saved because I've put it on video, right? So you got to think of it as like, if it's great content, it's utterly irrelevant whether you do it video, handwritten, whatever. And I would also say to people, play to your strengths. So if you're brilliant at video, do video. If you're, if strong at writing, write.
I also see a lot of nonprofits kind of take their content that they post on Instagram and then just LinkedIn's an afterthought. They just throw it on there. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that kind of difference. Should there be a difference? Should it be the same content? Does it play the same role? And just kind of the difference between having LinkedIn as an afterthought versus an actual strategy around it as well.
Yeah, I think posting is a bit like the old-fashioned press release. So we would, back in the day, write a press release, and then we would send that press release out to, say, 4 or 5 different newspapers. But depending on the newspaper, we tailored it. So if I was sending the press release to a tabloid, for example, versus a broadsheet, it would be exactly the same press release, but it would be written slightly different, given the audience of the newspaper. And back in the day, obviously, we would send that press release to a journalist who would then decide, does this go on the front cover, in the middle, back cover, or on the cutting room floor, right? These days, what we're doing is we're sending our post to the algorithm. And the algorithm is the journalist. The algorithm is testing our content to say, is this going to go on the front page and get, really get massive distribution, or am I just going to bury it because it's dull and no one's really engaging? So it's like you're going through the algorithm. So you want to optimize for the algorithm, but you're still talking to the humans, as it were. But you still got to think to yourself, different platforms may have the exact same audience that you're targeting on them, but they're in different mind spaces. So if I'm on Facebook, I'm in my kind of relaxed community, hanging out hobby head. That's what that's what I'm about. So if you're talking to me there, you might want to be putting a spin on the community angle. If I'm talking on LinkedIn, I'm at work. So give me the work angle. If I'm on X, that's all about sharing information quickly without barriers. That's all about information sharing. So give me that. And there's also a little bit of language you could think about that as well. So if I'm talking to LinkedIn, I might start using languages like career, meeting, colleague, staff, company. Those are like work words, strategy. Those are words that you use at work that you wouldn't normally talk to, like your kids with, for example. If I'm talking to X, which is more about sharing information without barriers, I'm talking about policy, research, information, and then if I'm talking to Facebook, I'm talking more about sister, brother, uncle, church, gym, school. So, I'm talking more community language. So that would be how I'm sort of like the press releases back in the day would be tabloid broadsheet. Now it's which mindset, which mind space are they in? That's how I differentiate those posts.
And what would you say to a fundraiser who says like, "Oh, I don't wanna use my LinkedIn for fundraising, like, that's my personal," even though it is a professional network, but it's
Yeah,
like my personal separate thing from the
yeah,
organization. Like, what would you
yeah.
say to them?
Well, first of all, it's completely your choice because number one, it's your personal profile. And really, you can do whatever you like with your personal profile. And if you choose not to use it for your job, that's entirely down to you. However, if you're a fundraiser and you're at work and it's incredibly stressful to get in front of funders, then you're sitting there with an incredibly powerful tool that would enable you to get in front of funders extremely effectively. So I would also then think I'm using it for work and I'm using it for my career, then if I'm building up an entire network of funders, I think that's a really positive thing for my career. So if I then if I apply for a job as a corporate funder, hypothetically, and I say I've got 5,000 corporate connections on LinkedIn who I actively interact with every day, I'm going to put that on my resume and I'm going to put that in my application and I'm going to mention it in the interview as well, because I bring a whole network with me, which has taken me some time to cultivate, or I'm in the process of cultivating. So I think that's really positive. I think when I'm using LinkedIn, if I'm connected to a load of funders, I'm using it like a focus group as well, because they'll be talking about what they're doing, what they're not doing, what's working, what isn't. So it gives me a sense of what my target market, which helps me interact and find funders. So it hopefully makes my job much more enjoyable. It makes it more effective and I will be, better at it, but it also makes me a lot more marketable. Then I would dare say there's so many social platforms that if I said, well, actually, I just want to keep in touch with loads of colleagues and I'm really keen to talk to lots of other fundraisers and blah, 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 there are lots of closed groups that I could join to do that. There's some really great closed groups on Facebook that I could use to do that. I think closed groups, people are more honest. Because if I turned around and said, I'm really having trouble with my trustees, they keep promising they're going to open up their address books and they never do, I'm not writing that on an open platform, but I would write it in a closed group. And then in a closed group, on an open platform, no one's coming to me and saying, oh, my trustees are a nightmare too. In a closed group, people are going to be more honest and say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And so it's a richer conversation. And it's usually quite intimate, aren't they? Those closed groups. You genuinely get to know people really, really well. So you can have it all. You just segment your life like you do your real life. So, if you're going to the gym, you don't take your entire family, everybody you've ever met in your life to the gym. You know what I mean? You go with your gym buddies. If you go to work, you hang out with your work buddies, family times, family time. You segment your real life. You can segment your virtual life as well.
So many interesting things to think about. Like you are using it for prospecting, but also you can get, support from other people in the sector in a more private environment, but still public. And build relationships with everyone as you go very actively, but also passively through like content creation and the algorithm. There's just so much to think about here. And then also, something that I wanted to add, like there's so many free professional development opportunities on LinkedIn as well. So like free online summits and like free like workshops where you can actually connect with people who go to that event as well, who have that
Yeah.
similar. So if
Yeah.
it's like ethical philanthropy, maybe there's people who are not fundraisers who are attending those webinars, right? That you can also tap into. This might be overwhelming for someone starting out. They're looking at their LinkedIn profile and they're like, oh God, my picture. Oh God, there's nothing on here, right? What do you think would be the best three first steps for someone to take?
Um, I think the first thing you want to do is make sure your profile is looking half decent, even if it's not the most polished thing in the world. At least have a good, decent photograph in there, and you know, make sure that it's up to date. So your current job is in there and things like that. Then I would say, think about who it is that you want to reach out to and why. And you don't have to physically contact people. You can just follow people. And once you start following people, do start engaging, that liking and commenting, even if you don't think, oh, the idea of putting content out just terrifies you. At least like and comment. And if you can, when you're commenting, try to get people to talk back to you. So don't just go, oh, thanks for sharing. That's nice. But that, if nothing else, do that. That's better than not doing that. Do the bare minimum, if nothing else. But what you want to do is you want to build up to having conversations and starting those relationships with people, basically.
Oh, yes, that's such a good tip. It seems kind of like easier to understand if you're on LinkedIn quite as much as we are. But yeah, the like leave a comment that has value attached to it, that people want to talk to you and respond, because then those people responding to you will actually share that post and your comment to their network.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
opens up a little bit more and more
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
slowly bring people in and like slowly build up an audience, which is great.
Yeah. Because one of the feedback when people do my online course is um, when they leave comments, they often get direct messages from funders because of the comments they left. But it's not necessarily the author of the post. So, so what typically happens is, let's say, Maria, you've posted something and you're a funder, and I then left a comment on yours. Other people read your post and read my comment, and it's those other invisible people that send the DM, the direct message, saying, I've just saw your comment that you left from Maria. Would you, blah, blah, blah. And that's how they are getting most of their meetings and stuff. It's from, leaving, because if Maria, you've already put a post out and you've already attracted a crowd. So I'm just jumping in on the fact that you've created a crowd. Whereas if I'm putting my own content out, I'm then having to draw the crowd in myself. And that's why commenting is really, really underrated, and it shouldn't be.
I think that's such a good point. Going back to your press release example, like they have an audience built in. That's what you send them the press release. So same thing when you're commenting, you're tapping into these already built in audiences that
Yeah.
you are engaging with and then trying to build yourself, which is awesome. Michelle, is there anything else that you want to leave our audience with today?
I would also just add, I think LinkedIn as well is a really, really good stewarding tool as well, looking after your current donors. Because if I was a corporate funder, I generally have one point of contact and I don't go over their head because it's really inappropriate for me to do that offline. But if I'm on LinkedIn and if you were my contact and we connected, I could connect with your boss and your boss's boss and your colleagues. And then when I can get to know everyone socially, in a socially acceptable manner. And I think the other feedback I get from my students is, often if they're chasing a funder who's not coming back to them, be that an existing donor, they're like, how many times can I send this person an email saying, oh, by the way, you promised me to meet with me and you haven't come back to me. Can we please get that in the diary or whatever? Seeing your presence on LinkedIn, you comment on stuff and then all of a sudden you get an email from your current donor going, oh, I'm so sorry, I was supposed to come back to you. It's because they see you and go, oh, damn it, I was supposed to get back to her. So actually just having a presence on LinkedIn can also, the offline and the online world just marry up beautifully. And that's the secret of it. It's not this weird thing that you have to do as work on the side. It complements everything you do offline, and what you do offline complements what you do online. And then they come together, and that's when it really starts to work.
I love it. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of this episode because people don't know how to use LinkedIn outside of looking for a job. So to
Yeah.
think of like all these different opportunities that are available is just so exciting. Thank you, Michelle, for coming on to the Small Nonprofit. We so appreciate your insight and everything that you do. If you're listening, you should definitely go follow Michelle. I'll have her LinkedIn in the show notes, but she posts really amazing content, and you can see her putting these tips into the world, into actionable steps. So I would really encourage you to do that. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of the Small Nonprofit, and bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.